ready? Good evening. This is Frank Cagle. I'll be moderating your call this evening. You can press 0 on your phone and ask a question, and I'll relay it to Gordon, and we'll get his answers. And Gordon, while we're waiting for questions to come in, I wanted to ask you about something I think is probably the most important thing in the race, and that's this whole business about education. If Lamar Alexander is reelected and the Republicans take over, he'll be writing federal education policy, Common Core, charter schools, vouchers. What do you think about that? I mean, is it...
Well, Frank, Frank, as you know, and we've known each other, and I want to thank everybody that is on the call tonight, and the reason we're having the town hall conference call is because Lamar Alexander refuses to debate us one-on-one, so we're having to come to folks directly. Frank, as you know, if it weren't for public education, I wouldn't be on this call tonight.
You mean just because you grew up on the Pigeon River there in Cott County, and
well, my dad
pretty grim there, and
my dad was a moonshiner when I was born, and I grew up in a one-bedroom trailer, and my dad believed in an education, and so and the only way I could have an education was a public education, and I worked my way through college in Johnson City at East Tennessee State, and loading trucks in Memphis on Florida Street to get through law school. So I'm a huge believer in public education, and throughout this whole campaign, I bet I've talked to 200 teachers one-on-one, and not the first one is in favor of Common Core. And Lamar Alexander is in favor of Common Core, and think about it.
Well, now, he won't say one way or the other, will he?
Well, actually, I think Joe Carr had him pretty well pegged on Common Core in the primary, that he is in favor of it. He and Bill Haslam both are in favor of it. And
well, I think Joe Carr has said that if Lamar wants him to endorse him, all he has to do is repudiate Common Core, and Joe Carr hasn't endorsed him.
No, and he has not repudiated it, and he won't repudiate it. And because if you go back and look in Lamar's history in the 90s when he was running for president, and you will remember this, and a lot of our listeners will, Lamar worked and was a consultant for Chris Whittle when Chris Whittle was trying to privatize the education system in this country. And all Common Core is an updated Bill Gates version of that. A lot of people will remember that when Lamar was Secretary of Education, he had this lady named Diane Ravitch working for him, and Lamar has openly said and written that he would always listen to Diane Ravitch. And Diane
now,
Ravitch,
you've been reading the Little Plaid Book again, Gordon. I mean, you can't hold Lamar's feet to the fire just because of something he wrote.
Just because something he said.
Diane Ravitch is an expert.
And I'm not plagiarizing it. I'm adopting what Diane Ravitch said. And she said that all Common Core is the privatization of public education. And recently there was a protest about Common Core in Nashville. And the day before the protest, and I haven't been in a protest in 35 or 40 years, and the day before the protest, I called a friend of mine who is now the headmaster in a private school, and actually Bill Haslam's Webb School in Knoxville. And I asked him, I said, what are the private schools doing concerning Common Core? And he said, we're not going to adopt it because we know we can do better. Well, if it's not good enough for the private schools in this state, why should it be good enough for the public schools? And what we need to do in this.
Gordon, let me interrupt you for a minute here. We should tell the listeners out there that if they want to ask a question, you press 0 on your keypad, and that allows you to ask a question. And then Gordon will. I'll relay your question to Gordon, and he will answer your question. So, my bad. I should have told you that to begin with while we were carrying on here.
Well,
but just press your 0 on your keypad and ask your question.
Yeah, and that's
so,
and.
I'm
so
sorry I interrupted.
Let me go back. I asked the headmaster at the private school. I said, what are you doing? And he said, we're not going to use Common Core because we can do better, and we don't believe we need to teach to a test and or evaluate our teachers based on the standards in Common Core. Now, clearly, we need standards in the state of Tennessee, but we need to set our own standards in Tennessee. But we can look at national standards. But
I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of questions about education, a lot of this, and they press 0, and that way they will be able to ask their questions, and we'll get into more detail as we go along. I think a lot of people, I'm sure, out there in Tennessee are concerned about Social Security. I mean, we hear every day all about how it's going to go bankrupt and all this stuff. And what do you think about the deficit and the way things are going up there in Washington?
Well, I mean, think about it. You can't fight. You can't cut taxes, fight 2 wars, and go through a recession like we've just hopefully coming out of. And in that regard, we've run up approximately a $17 trillion debt, and not including our debt for Iraq and Afghanistan. And we've got to start paying down that debt. And what we really, I think we have to do, the first thing is we've got to somehow change our tax structure to a more fair or tax. Or
you mean like hedge funds ought to pay as much as somebody's secretary?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Warren Buffett.
That question, by the way, was from William in Greenville. I'm sorry, I'm just getting to that stuff.
But we've got to do that, and we've got to start paying down our debt, but we've also got to have money to start rebuilding our infrastructure for the next 100 years. We've got to lead the world, and the only way we're going to lead the world is to have the best infrastructure in the world. And not only when we start doing that, we're going to add approximately 1 million jobs and good paying jobs. So we've got to start the process. Yeah.
Billy in Jonesboro was wondering whether the Republicans are overreacting to this situation in Syria with ISIS. Is this something we need to?
Well, I can say I can clearly ISIS is a threat. I don't think there's any question. But I hearken back to what my Republican friend Jimmy Duncan said when he was asked to sign on with the Iraq War, and his question to Colin Powell was, is Iraq an imminent threat? And the word is imminent, and clearly we have to address ISIS. But we've just come off 10 years of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And
Virginia in Whitesburg wants to expand a little bit more on Common Core. We talked about that at the beginning, but if you could go back to it and run through that again, it's something they're trying to pushed through every state in the union. A lot of states are backing off on it.
A lot of states are backing off on it. Oklahoma.
Lamar refuses to repudiate it.
Well, and Lamar is waffling on it now, and so is Governor Haslam, and I think we're going to see, even in Tennessee, is that in the next legislative session, or maybe two legislative sessions, we're going to see that the teachers and the people, the parents in this state are not going to agree to adopt Common Core, and they're going to press their legislators to reverse that field. And
you think the state legislature will probably kill it in Tennessee?
Well,
next session?
There's a lot of
they've said they will.
Yeah, they've said they will, and there's a lot of legislators, Republicans and Democrats, together in a bipartisan bipartisan manner, have called for the ouster of Mr. Haslam's Common Core person, Huffington, I believe his name is, and
yeah.
But Mr. Haslam refuses to do that. So
yeah. Michael in Springville wants to know what you talk a little bit about agriculture. I mean, the Farm Bill is a huge appropriation every year that kind of tends to take care of the big boys. What are your views about farm bills, and what can we do to help Tennessee farmers?
I think, Michael, one of the major things that we need to do, and I believe there's approximately 66,000 farm families in Tennessee, or farms in Tennessee, and one of the things we really need to do and is help the rural economy and make sure in the next 10 years, and I was in Jackson, Tennessee last week, and Jackson is one of the first communities in the state to have broadband internet access. And we've got to be ready to do that, to bring jobs to our rural economy and help our farmers.
Yeah.
As I appreciate it, and I'm not an expert in agriculture, although we're going to be in front of the Farm Bureau next week. As I appreciate it, most farmers are small farmers and have a job other than farming.
Yeah.
So we've got to.
As we go along here, we want to ask some opinions of some of the readers, listeners, and we're going to ask a poll question, and then you can answer 1, 2, or 3. The first poll question is: in your opinion, do you think things in Tennessee are headed in the right direction, or are they on the wrong track? 1 for right direction, 2 for wrong track, and 3 for undecided. So if you could vote now, we'd like to get your take on this, because this is the kind of thing that we need, Gordon needs to know. So we've got a question here from Tommy from Newport. He wants to know your stance.
I know a little bit
control.
about Newport.
I think you do. But he wants to know about your stance on gun control. Now, why is it that you favor Obama grabbing your Glock? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, that's funny, Frank. That's funny.
You think Lamar Alexander's ever fired a gun?
I doubt Lamar Alexander owns a gun. I can't believe he's ever shot one. But it's really funny that a moonshiner's son from Cott County, who grew up in a one-bedroom trailer, and the one bedroom had all kinds of guns in it, could get a rating that I got. I got an F from the NRA. And
but like I said before, you don't think the NRA might be sucking up to the incumbent a little bit?
Well, they do give Lamar money, and it's funny because I made the statement after I got the rating that I've got my Glock next to my bed stand and next to my bed, and I've got 2 shotguns in the closet, and I'm a strong proponent hunting, fishing, and the Second Amendment. But
Yeah.
I think I got that rating because I have a D in front of my name, and Lamar has an R.
Yeah, that could be. We just want to remind everybody, if you have a question, you press 0, and that will allow you to ask a question, and I'll relay that question to Gordon, and he'll answer it. So I think, I think the NRA is probably just a long list of people that contribute money. I mean, these special interest groups up there in Washington. One of the reasons I'm here.
If you go look, if anyone wants to go look at the money that Lamar has raised, 95% of it comes from out of state, from PACs out of state, and he's raised millions of dollars. He spent $6 million against his opponents in the primary. And it's 95%.
Why do you suppose they're making these contributions?
Well, the answer to that is access, and it's interesting. Lamar has come out with a bill on soring of horses. The Tennessee walking horses, and he's directly opposing a bill that would stop soring. And Lamar wants to continue it, but it's also interesting that one of his campaign treasurer is head of the Tennessee Walking Horse Association. So,
no kidding.
No kidding. And
yeah.
that's typical of Lamar's career. So
anybody that owns a horse or any pet, it's just a tragedy what goes on. We got some more questions here. We got Amy from Knoxville. How do you stand on Amendment 2? I believe that is the amendment to allow the governor to appoint judges, and the legislature will confirm them.
I think, Amy, that's for me the hardest amendment to make a decision on. I personally believe in elections, and I realize if we have elections of appellate court judges now, because of the United States Supreme Court's rulings, there's just all kinds of money going to be brought into those elections, and the amendment would leave things the way they've been for the last 30 years, where the governor would appoint, and I'm not crazy about that, but they added one other little line in the amendment, and that says the governor will appoint, but the legislature will approve. And so that makes it just so political. And so I think...
Well, we saw Lieutenant Governor Ramsey campaign against the justices in the retention elections, so you can imagine what would happen there.
Well, absolutely.
I've got a good question here from Marjorie.
Go ahead.
Marjorie from Newport. She wants to know what you think about health care, Obamacare, and all that. What do you think should be done?
Well, I think that the Affordable Care Act, and what a lot of people call Obamacare, has some great things in it, and that's the caps, which there's no restriction on caps. There's the pre-existing conditions are no longer there, and the insurance company has to insure you, and your children can stay on the policy until they're 26 years of age. Those three things are just off the top of my head excellent things that we need. Now that's just one, and insuring people is a moral issue, and I think it's the right thing. Insuring more people, I think it's the right thing to do. The question is, how do we haven't addressed economically how we're going to reduce health care costs. And the one thing I've always advocated from day one is making insurance companies compete on cost. And right now, they don't have
now,
to.
Gordon, that's just totally unreasonable to expect the insurance companies to act like other businesses in America and be subject to the law.
To compete in the capitalistic market.
They spend a whole lot of money up there, Gordon.
I know they spend, and they make a lot of money, and they try to keep it. But there's the McCarran-Ferguson Act, which needs to be repealed, gives insurance companies an exemption from antitrust enforcement. And so the insurance companies can get in a room, fix the prices, and go to each state and say, here are the prices. And that's
let me remind the listeners here that if you want to ask a question, you press 0, and you can send your question along, and then they'll relay it to me, and I'll relay it to Gordon. That's how we're working it tonight. Gordon, Michael in Knoxville wants to know about the latest Lamar ad, and I quote, "Do you have a response to the lies Lamar is saying?"
Well, Michael, I found it. I love this question because I found it very interesting. The first Lamar ad was just Lamar talking, and didn't mention me by name. It just said my opponent, and I thought it was really bad, and evidently the people thought it was really bad because they pulled it. It was only on one day. And then the next day, it was just all attack ads and mentioning me by name. And it's really funny. They called me a slick lawyer. And look, I started practicing law in Newport, Tennessee, and my first office cost me $37 a month, and so. I've been practicing law for a long time, and I that's something God has blessed me with, and hopefully I've done some good.
Yeah.
But his ads are trying to portray me as being totally.
You're just an Obama puppet.
I vote for Obama, and the thing about it is he's the one who votes with Obama 62% of the time. Every picture
How many
you
times
see,
have you voted with Obama?
I don't think I've cast my first vote for Obama, and I've never met him. so
Mike from Johnson City wants to know how you feel about the minimum wage.
Well, I am a strong proponent of raising the minimum wage to $10.10, and I think that's the fair thing to do. I think that once we raise the minimum wage, 77% of our economy is based on consumer spending, and people who make minimum wage are really in need of an increase, and they'll spend that, which will create more money in the economy and more jobs. So it's an economic issue. Lamar Alexander has said he would vote to abolish the minimum wage. And that's just one of many, many issues where Lamar Alexander and I totally differ. And so, no, I'm for it. In fact, if it were up to me, I'd have a living wage.
Yeah. Charles from Newport wants to know how you feel about term limits.
We're getting a lot of calls from Newport, so I'm for term limits, and evidently Lamar Alexander was for term limits in 1998 when he wrote his book, because he said in his book a person should serve 2 terms and get out. Well, he's changed his mind. So I'm for term limits. I don't believe in career politicians. I really think that a person should be have a career and quite frankly then go into after they have reached some maturity and then be a public servant.
Yeah. we've got some more questions here. We want to try to get as many in as we can. Let's see. Tracy's also asking about the minimum wage. We've answered that one. Gretchen says, how are you going to get more young people involved in your campaign? Where can they sign up, or how can they get involved? You
can get online, GordonBallSenate.com, and put your name, number in, and we'll have somebody get back in touch with you. And in the primary, I was we didn't have our total team in place now, and we've got now 10 full-time staff members, and so we're ready to take your help, and we need all the volunteers we can get.
Yeah.
So it's just GordonBallSenate.com.
Right. Bob from Maryville wants to know how you feel about expanding Medicaid.
Well, I clearly believe in Medicaid in Tennessee, and I want to tell the listeners a little story. I was in Knoxville the other night at a fundraiser, and one of the waiters asked me if I would come outside and speak to him, and he told me about his son who was in a car wreck in Washington State, and they saved his life, and Medicaid took care of him because he didn't have anything. And then they sent him back to Tennessee to recuperate and see doctors, and now that he's back in Tennessee, he can't get Medicaid. He has no money. He has no way to see a doctor. So there's 163,000 people that could be on Medicaid if Governor Haslam would just extend it. We've lost almost $2 billion because Bill Haslam refuses to do that, and Lamar Alexander supports Bill Haslam in doing that. This summer I was in Brownsville, Tennessee, when their hospital closed. It's a rural hospital, and it's the first one of 21 other hospitals that are in danger of closing because lack of the Medicaid funds. I see no reason why we should not extend Medicaid, at least extend it for 2 more years. And
which is 100% funded by the federal government.
Which is 100% funded in the next 2 years, and Governor Haslam refuses to tell the people of Tennessee why he's not doing it.
I think you were telling me you were out in West Tennessee, somewhere Haywood County, somewhere a hospital closed.
I was in Brownsville, Tennessee, where their
hospital is that where it was?
Yeah, and in Brownsville in Haywood County, and think about it. In the last 5 years, the state of Tennessee has put in about $50 million in an industrial park in Haywood County, and now they've let their hospital close. How many companies do you think are actually going to move to Haywood County without a hospital?
Yeah.
And so
let's ask another poll question. We've been letting people answer questions here. We're asking people to rate Lamar Alexander's job as senator. 1 would be excellent. 2 would be good. 3 would be fair. 4 would be poor. 5 would be, if I was his boss, I'd fire him. So punch in your answer now, and we'll get your response. That's our question. Rate Lamar Alexander's job. Excellent, good, fair, poor, or I'd fire him. So
I'm not going to comment on that one. So
no, we'll let people register their own. Let's see. You got any opinion on same-sex marriage? Charles from Collierville wants to know.
My opinion, Charles, has always been that I don't believe the government should be in our bedroom, and I don't believe the government should tell me who I should fall in love with. And that's always been my opinion. It will always be my opinion. that it's really none of government's business.
Kind of a libertarian attitude there for all of you.
Well,
Republicans.
For a Democrat, I come pretty close to being a libertarian on those issues.
Well, here, let me throw you a softball here. Christopher in Townsend says, "What will you want to do about the environment?" You've had some experience with that, I believe, suing people.
You know my history in the environment, Chris. I am a strong believer in making sure the environment works for all of us, and for the last 25 years, as Frank knows, I have represented people on the Pigeon River to clean up the river from industrial pollution by a paper company that sits just across the North Carolina border, and so we have fought for years and years and years, and we're back in court every 3 years to make this company do this, and so I understand what it takes. I understand both sides of issues, the economic issue and the environmental issue, and so I'm really strong on the environment. And let me say one thing that I'm really proud of. We finished another case a few years ago, and we had about $750,000 left over from that case that we were able to give to the Friends of the Smokies to help with their environmental efforts.
Yeah. Ollie in Ripley says prescription drugs are cheaper in Canada. Why can't we have them cheaper here?
Well, I think we could if we had the legislation in place to cause that, and I realize
you had talked to me before about the fact that the law prevents Medicare and Medicaid from negotiating with the pharmacy companies to get better prices on prescription drugs. They have to pay retail.
That's right, and we do, and the law prevents negotiation by Medicare and Medicaid. And so the insurance companies can charge what they want to charge, or the drug companies, I'm sorry, not the insurance companies, the drug companies. And I realize, we all realize that there's a lot of money that goes into research and development, and companies should be allowed to recoup their investment and make an honest, fair profit on the drugs. And that's the great American way, the capitalistic system. But there are times, and we see that drugs are a necessity, and they're almost a right, not a privilege. And so we need to be able to have our citizens treated fairly and pay a decent price instead of being gouged. So
so you would favor legislation that would allow the Medicaid and Medicare to negotiate with the insurance, with the drug companies to get a better price. I mean, Walmart doesn't pay retail.
No, they don't pay retail because they buy in bulk, and right. So no, I believe that any time you can negotiate over price on any object, the consumer is much better off. Right. And certainly in the drug situation.
Frederick from Collierville wants to talk about immigration reform. I understand Senator Alexander voted for a bill that allows for a path to citizenship, and that was a big issue in the primary. But,
right. It was a big issue in the primary. Let me say this, and again, I'm talking to the Farm Bureau next week, and the farmers in this country need people who can work in their industry, and I totally understand that and appreciate that, and we've had a lot of discussions, and Lamar Alexander voted for blanket amnesty. He was attacked for that in the primary. I'm opposed to blanket amnesty, but here's what I would say. I would say there's probably 12 million undocumented people in this country. I would say we find those people. We can't send 12 million people home, and because it would destroy parts of our economy. And we find those people. Those people register. They pay taxes. They become good working people in our country, and they get put at the back of the line for citizenship if they're so inclined. But they don't. We can't reward people for breaking the law by coming to our country. So, but with that in mind, we can't destroy parts of our economy either, such as farming. So it's a hard issue. It's not an easy, one size fits all issue.
Janet from Gatlinburg wants you to talk about veterans benefits. And we've had a couple of questions about that, and I think that's a real concern. We don't have a veterans hospital here in Knoxville. They're kind of spread out across the state.
Right.
What
it's really
veterans?
It's really a huge concern, and quite frankly, I couldn't believe in the past, 6 months, that Lamar Alexander voted to cut veterans benefits, and veterans all over the state were up in arms. And so everywhere I go, veterans want to talk about that. And
let me interrupt you for a second, Gordon.
Sure.
I want to remind everybody, if you want to ask a question, which I will relay to Gordon, you press 0 on your keypad, and the staff will take your question, and they'll relay it to me, and I'll ask Gordon the question. I'm sorry, Gordon. Go ahead.
No,
I'm
let
just
me
not
say,
very good at stuff.
Right.
Good host.
I believe veterans should be our most cherished citizens. And my brother died, 4 years ago now, and my brother was a veteran. But the last 5 years of his life, he was paralyzed. He had an adult case of MS, and because he was a veteran, I just assumed that he could get in a veterans nursing home. And come to find out, he wasn't allowed to get in because his problem was not service related, and I just couldn't imagine this country doing that to any veteran. I guess I was naive, but that was cut out, I think, in the 90s. That if your injury was not service related, you can't get in. And
how do you feel about the idea that veterans would get a card which they could take and use at any doctor or hospital instead of having to drive 100 miles to a veterans hospital?
I think that's a simple answer. That's a great answer to, for instance, my dad, before he died, had to drive 100 miles from Newport to Johnson City. And sometimes he was too sick to go. No, if he'd had a card, a simple card, and he could have seen his own doctor. What's wrong with that idea? That's it just, there's so many things we should be doing for people who protected our lives and our way of life. It makes no sense to me not to do that.
Yeah. Jim out in South Fulton asks, what can you do really to get some jobs in the West Tennessee?
I think there's
that's more of a state
things.
issue, but
yeah. Well, traditionally, Jim, the United States Senator has not been very involved in helping, not involved at all in helping recruit industry to a state. But I'm going to be a hands-on United States Senator. I want to be able to go to South Fulton and actually go with the head of government in South Fulton and help recruit industry, or the county mayor in Johnson City, in Washington County, or Johnson County, or Shelby County.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to say to that prospective company, you know, we welcome you to Tennessee, and that's one of the things that I can do quickly with our local folks.
John from Lawrenceville wants to know how you feel about teacher pay being linked to test scores. That's
well, again, that goes back to
the Common Core thing.
That goes back, John, to the Common Core issue that we talked about earlier, and I realize people are getting on and off this call, but we talked about that earlier, and I've talked to teachers up and down the state who are being their pay is being based upon, in some instances, kids from another school that they don't even teach, and they get rated. I talked to this lady in Murfreesboro last weekend, and for 35 years she'd been a level 5 teacher, and now she's a level 1 teacher, which makes she's dropped, you know, four scale, which makes no sense just because of the Common Core rating.
I think you've talked about the speed which they're trying to ram Common Core through, and the training's not there, and the technology's not there. And
no, certainly the technology's not there, and the training's not there.
So that's how your level 5 teacher gets to be a level 1, yeah.
Absolutely, and so it's just not fair to the teachers, and nor is it fair to our kids.
Yeah. Let's see. Mary from Egan wants to know your position on legalizing marijuana in Tennessee.
I think it's over the years I have watched, and I'm going to use if I can, a personal moment here. 20 years ago, my wife's best friend had stage 4 cancer. And she was, 20 years ago, a young person who just had a baby. And she had stage 4 cancer, and the only thing that would give her any kind of relief was marijuana. And of course it was illegal to smoke marijuana, but that was the only thing.
So you think medical uses might be?
I think medical marijuana. I think it's a godsend to people, to a lot of people, and I think we should have medical marijuana in this state.
Yeah. Here's a question from Orland from Greenville. He wants to know how you can use your law practice to become a better senator.
Well, for me, Warren, my law practice.
Committee, maybe.
I would not mind to be on the Judiciary Committee, but I think that what I bring to the table is 38 years of being able to solve people's problems, and to being able to sit down with people across the table who have adversarial positions from mine, and we finally come to a resolution. And I hope to bring that kind of expertise to the United States Senate. And I think I have some good ideas. I think the doing away with the antitrust situation for insurance companies is an idea that we needed to have done years ago. So, because of my expertise, if any, I think that it would be a better United States senator.
Yeah. We've had some questions about military budget and so forth. I don't know. There's another question here about Janice from Trenton wants to know how you feel about background checks. I'm not sure what that's in regard to, whether it's illegal immigration. Let's try that. We've got a real problem with millions of we've got people in the country illegally, and when they go to get a job, if nobody's doing background checks, then what does that do to an American citizen who wants to get a job and is getting competition from illegal aliens?
Right. That's why I think that we've got to, and we're spending a lot of money on the immigration problem, a huge amount of money. That's why I think we have to identify those people that are here illegally and who have a job or going to get a job, and we've got to register them and give them a number. Give them, something like not a Social Security card, but something like a number where when they go to get a job, for example, in the agriculture industry where we desperately need people. And so they are registered, they're paying taxes, and they're not just taking from our system and they're giving to our system. So I think that's what we have to do.
Yeah. We've had several different questions about taxes and subsidies and so forth. Francis from Maryville wonders, if you become the senator, will you respond to your constituents? Evidently, will you respond better than Lamar?
Well,
so
if I respond, if Lamar shows up about once every 6 years, and I grew up in an era where our congressman was a fellow named Jimmy Quillen a million years ago, and he always had an open door policy, and so will I. And I'll be back in Tennessee on the weekends. I don't want to live in Washington. I've worked in and out of Washington for 25 or 30 years, and I don't want to do that. And no, I'll be back home most of the time and in and out of counties, because I enjoy the one thing I've enjoyed about this campaign is the people and being with people every day.
Let's get in another poll question before we get off here. This one is the question is, the negative ads that Alexander is focused on, Gordon, not on his record, does this make you more or less likely to reelect Lamar? More or less. Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, press 3 for undecided, press 4 if you haven't seen any of the commercials. I don't know how you could avoid them, but anyway.
Well, we're both running them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching these commercials attacking you, does it make you more or less likely to reelect Lamar? If 1 is yes, 2 is no, 3 is undecided, 4 if you haven't seen any of the commercials. So we're getting on toward the end of our program here, but we want to get as many in as we can. We had a lot of discussion about the tax code. What about subsidies, tax breaks? I think cutting social programs. We don't want to ever raise taxes on people that can afford it or whatever.
Right. I think that whatever tax, I think we've got to reform our tax code. And whatever system we go to, I think there's got to be an adjustment for folks concerning clothing, concerning food. There's got to be, well, for example, if you had a national sales tax, I think there would have to be certain areas that would be exempted from a national sales tax that would allow actually people to not pay taxes on those kinds of items that are necessities of life. Whatever system we go to, and again, I'm not a tax expert, but I would like to be in the debate. And whatever system we go to,
finance would be a place you'd like to be.
Yes, it really would. I mean, I really think I could play a good part in that, because it has to be fair and equitable to everybody. We're all in this together, and that's everything for the common good. And that's what I believe, and that's what I think our Constitution demands.
Another text question. Keith from Knoxville wants to know what your position is on Amendment 3. I believe that bans a state income tax.
Well, I don't think we're ever going to have an income tax. Actually, we have the Hall tax in Tennessee, and it's a tax on dividends. But I think the legislature, I believe I'm right in this. I'm subject to being corrected, but I believe I'm right. The legislature is going to phase that out, hopefully over the next few years.
They're working on it. The budget's real iffy right now, but yeah.
Right.
But with the state income taxes, you don't think that's something we need to do?
No, I don't believe we should ever have an state income tax, and I'm totally opposed to that. The only thing I'm not sure that we need to put that in the Constitution. You know, the Constitution is a document that gives people rights, not restricts rights, and so that's why I'm not sure that it needs to be in the Constitution, but it's not a big deal in my opinion, because quite frankly, we're never going to have a state income tax anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think anybody that I know of would vote for a state income tax.
All right, let's get one more poll question in before we get out of here.
Okay.
Based on what you've heard tonight, if the election were held today, you'd be very surprised. No, anyway. If the election were held today, would you vote for Gordon Ball or Lamar Alexander? Press 1 for Gordon Ball, press 2 for Lamar Alexander, press 3 for undecided. Based on what you've heard tonight, if the election were held today, would you vote for Gordon Ball or Lamar Alexander? 1 for Gordon Ball, 2 for Lamar, and 3 for undecided. Gordon, you want to wrap things up with a little coda to the whole thing here and tell everybody?
Well, I do. I'd like to, Frank, and I want to thank you for your participation and your friendship and over the years, and I want to thank all the listeners and the people who've called in to ask questions, and thank you for being here. And you know, I believe a lot of different things, and my viewpoints go from Democratic to Republican to independent views, and I believe that whether it's Republican, Democrat, or independent ideas, as long as they're good ideas, I will consider all of them, and I'll vote for the best one. It makes no difference to me whether a Republican offers it or a Democrat offers it or an independent offers it. And I think that's what we really need to do to move this country forward. And I think that anyone who has a job in this country should not live in poverty. I truly believe that, and I believe that if you want to change things in Washington, you've got to change the people in Washington. That's the only thing we can do.
Yeah.
And
well, Gordon, as you know, I mean, I'm a retired newspaper man. I've worked for Republicans, office holders, but I'm kind of sick of what's been going on in Washington, and you're my friend. That's why I'm here tonight.
Right.
I'm more of a libertarian, and we share a lot of the same
Yes,
views.
I know you are.
Keep the government out of our bedrooms and their hands off our guns.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't want anybody telling me what to do.
We did have one great question here. I don't know. Anyway, somebody wants to know: are you kin to Billy Ball and Selmer?
In Selmer? You know, I don't know
I was right off
if I am or not.
Selmer,
I don't think.
Border.
I mean, I have no idea. I've got relatives everywhere, and but no, I don't know. I'd be proud to be, I'm sure. So
I'm sure, and whoever you are, tell Billy to vote for Gordon. All right.
And I hope Billy votes for me. So,
yeah.
But no, again, I want to thank everyone that called in and for giving us your valuable time. Yeah.
And you guys be sure and vote now on this question based on what you've heard tonight. Gordon's views on everything is, if the election were held today, would you vote for Gordon Ball or Lamar Alexander? You press 1 for Gordon, 2 for Lamar, and 3 for undecided. And preliminary results are that people out there kind of like you, Gordon.
Well, I like the people out there, so I hope I get to serve them for the next few years.
Yeah. Well, we've had a pretty good discussion here, and I'm sure you'll be doing more of it. And
well, actually, we will.
Is there any chance of a debate with Senator Alexander?
I don't think we ask him every day, and his handlers won't allow him to do that. And it's the Senate candidates all over the country are debating each other, but he won't do that. So I don't think there's any chance of a real debate. No.
Yeah.
So
he probably wants to get up and talk about how you're just another vote for the Obama agenda. So
I don't even know.
Your statement about who's voted with Obama.
and I made the statement when I picked up my petition to run. I said Lamar Alexander and Harry Reid and people like that are the problem in this country. And
was Harry Reid trying to help you get elected? They send a whole bunch of money down here to help you, or
I've never spoken. I've never spoken to the Democrats in Washington or Harry Reid. I mean, so
I understand Senator Alexander is a pretty good friend of Harry Reid. So
well, that's what I'm told. They have a lot of pictures taken together. So
yeah. Well, I've enjoyed chatting with you, Gordon.
Okay.
And
Frank, I've enjoyed it. And
we've enjoyed chatting with the folks out there.
Everybody for calling in.
Yeah. Well, if I can figure out how to
let me tell you again. It's GordonBallSenate.com to get on our website, and if you want to volunteer, we'd love to have you. And if you want to contribute to the campaign, we'd love that. But it's GordonBallSenate.com.
Okay, and on that note, we'll get out of here. Thanks everybody for participating.
Thanks, Frank.
Uh-huh.